God,
grant me the serenity
to accept the things I cannot change,
the courage to change the things I can,
and the wisdom to know the difference.
In this edition of Overcoming Addiction, we will focus on the importance of recovery coaching in our communities. Tonight's guests are recovery coach Chris Bonsall and recovery coach Katey Raftery. Together we can make a difference. Here's your host, Paul Hammersley.
And welcome to another edition of Overcoming Addiction. I'm Paul Hammersley, and I'm also the president of Malden Overcoming Addiction. And tonight we're going to talk about the importance of recovery coaching throughout our communities. So if you don't know what recovery coaching is, or you're just wondering, what it is, tonight we're gonna talk all about what it is, what it looks like, and there's a couple of people here with me tonight who are actual recovery coaches and doing this work in the community. Welcome, Katey.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Chris, what's happening? How are we doing?
Good.
So, you guys are recovery coaches, correct?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit how we got there. So the first thing I'm going to ask, before you became a recovery coach, before it all even entered your mind, when you made, what were you thinking to maybe bring you, Chris, I'll ask you, what were you thinking at the beginning? Why did you want to be a recovery coach?
I guess at first it was just to be able to help people. I got a lot from a recovery coach on my journey of recovery, and I thought that it would be great to try and give back to that. So that was like my sole purpose when I first came around and saw what was going on. It was just, to be able to hand people that access to recovery is just a great thing.
So you went through it yourself. You actually had a recovery coach. So you were familiar with the process and what a recovery coach did.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually went through Chelsea Drug Court.
Okay.
And they assign, recovery coaches to help us. So they just advocated for me a lot and taught me how to advocate for myself. Which was
amazing.
Essential, so.
Katie, what about you?
Well, I had heard about recovery coaches, but I didn't actually know what they were. I had been in recovery myself for a little while, and I saw that MOA had posted they were going to be having the Recovery Coach Academy. So I did a little research. I looked into it and saw what it was all about, a peer-to-peer, helping another person. And I know that in my personal recovery, the people that I gained my most knowledge from were people that had been through the process. So I got really interested and just signed up for the interview.
That's amazing, and I remember specifically the class that you both went through, and Malden Overcoming Addiction. So I went through the academy, the CCAR Recovery Coach Academy. I did it out in Worcester about a year before you guys did, and I was so amazed with it, and I was touched by it, and the feeling I got, the empowerment I got of wanting to help people. When I left there, I was stuck on how can we, as Malden Overcoming Addiction, how can we bring it to our community? So I did a whole lot of research with some other people in our organization, and we figured out a way, and we got a hold of the Malden Police Department and the Malden Fire Department were gracious enough to give us a grant to run our own and bring it to Malden, and that's where you guys saw the post, and we put it out there, we did interviews, and we talked to people, and we got a chance to choose the right people for the job, and part of the gig was to giving Malden Overcoming Addiction 4 hours a week of your time if we paid for it. And you guys have done that, with at least, I think, 30 to 40 other folks who have also were willing to give us their time. And so today, you guys are both volunteering with Malden Overcoming Addiction. And what do you think, as a recovery coach, Katey, I'll go you first. What do you think is the hardest part about being a coach, and what do you enjoy most about being a coach?
The hardest part, I think, for me is in the beginning developing that relationship of trust, because you're kind of just meeting someone where they're at. They could be at, still active or, different levels of their recovery. So
when you say still active, you mean they could still potentially possibly be using?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, they could still be using and they're starting to think about recovery, or they could be someone that has been in recovery and treatment before. So it's kind of just figuring out exactly where that person's at and working with them there and figuring out from there what services that I could help them get connected to, or what level that they're willing to go.
So basically what I'm hearing is you just, what exactly, Katey, let's back up so folks at home understand, what exactly is the job of a recovery coach? If you're to define it like the best you can, what is it that you do as a what do you provide as a recovery coach?
As a recovery coach, I'm a cheerleader, I'm a motivator. I also use my own experience in recovery to be a role model.
Right.
I also help connect people with resources in their community, and also advocate for them, through like I call it the alphabet soup,
Right.
There's the different acronyms, DTA, DCF, all these other organizations.
So if someone needs resources or whatever they might need, you're able, because you know how to navigate the system, and that's the
Exactly.
job of a recovery coach, to help that person that just really doesn't understand what's out there for them.
Right.
Amazing. See, that's what we're just trying to get across to people. And Chris, same question. For you, has there been a barrier, or what's the hardest part? And if there isn't a hardest part, why do you enjoy it so much being a coach?
Well, I think for me, the hardest part, one of the hardest parts, I should say, is definitely, advocating for people and showing people, helping them along their journey to recovery, showing them the avenues, the multiple pathways they can take for it. But the hardest part is definitely, working so hard with some people and then ultimately seeing them go through, because this disease is, a relapsing disease, seeing people go out the door that you've worked so hard with, and they just can't get it, and it's really, it hurts, it hurts to see that, because they're not only hurting themselves, which a lot of us think that inactive addiction, that we're hurting just ourselves. And in reality, we hurt everyone around us too. We leave a wake of destruction and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, they say the families are at the most, it's a family disease, and I can understand how that would be hard, because I too am a recovery coach, and the work that we do, the numbers are definitely not in our favor. It's a very high % rate of failure, and you kind of have to be a special person to keep coming back to it. And one of the most important things is, what are we doing for ourselves? Like, we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves,
Right.
and self-care is a big piece of that, making sure that we stay healthy and we stay sharp, and when we need to take a break.
With that being said, though, I also believe that, the one person that does get it with your help or on their own, or whatever the case may be, it's just, that's the gratifying aspect of it. So out of the 100 you may come in contact with, the 1 or 2 that succeed,
That's right.
is just like, yes,
Exactly.
And it's like, that's worth it. It makes it all worth it.
It's all about one.
It is.
Helping
absolutely.
one
That
person.
one individual
That's
that's
correct.
successful. Because now you look at the whole picture. You didn't only just help them, you helped their whole family, you helped the community, you helped everyone around them in contact with that person. That's the big picture.
Making a
is-
difference.
Is making a difference.
In someone's life, that's
Absolutely.
correct.
Absolutely.
But in order to continuously, for us to try to make that difference, I'll go back to that self-care piece. We need to be at our best, because the work is very tiresome, and we do need to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And,
Well, it's similar to what people say, but you can't love someone else if you don't love yourself.
that's right.
So I mean, that is a big role that you have to play in your own life. Is, if you're doing meetings every day or every other day, keep on doing what you're doing for yourself, so that you can be beneficial to other people.
And that's what I do in my life. My recovery comes first. Because I realized early on that if I didn't put myself in my recovery first, anything I put before it, I would lose. So I make sure that I have, my self-care. I get really connected with my family and my community, so that I fill my cup so I can pour from it and give to other people.
That's amazing. Katey, I'm going to go. When did you think recovery coaching was important in your life? I know that we talked about why you came here, but when did you think it was important to do it?
Well, once I went through the CCAR Academy with MOA, there was just a passion that was created inside of me, and it was like I was just set on fire. And as soon as I came out of that academy, that's all I wanted to do.
That academy's amazing.
Right. It really makes you look at yourself and look at your own strengths, because I think that's what coaching's all about. I think we focus a lot on people's deficits in life, and coaching is all about finding the person you're working with, their strengths, and helping them to utilize them in their recovery. If they're good at art, or if they're creative, or maybe they're great public speakers, you know what I mean? You work on those things to help build up their self-esteem and get them to a place, because as you know, addiction really wears people down, and they have a lot. I mean, I did in my life. My self-worth was pretty low when I came in the door. So it's all about fostering that and building them up so they can take charge of their own lives.
And finding out their strengths and weaknesses and like building on their strengths.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Chris, I think you've already answered that question. So do you think recovery coaching, do you think it's going to make a difference?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that if you could put one person with a recovery coach, and you know, not to mention multiple people, but if you just put one person with a recovery coach that can show them and that's willing to reach out, you know, and on the flip side, the recovery coach reaches out, you know, you constantly maintain contact with each other. You're showing people the ropes per se, you know, and that's the most important thing that we do, is we show them that recovery is possible. You know, this can be done, and this is how you do it. I'm not going to, you know, do it for you. Obviously, you have to work harder than me for your recovery, but I will show you the street to walk down. And, you know, you may find different roads to travel that will get you to the ultimate same goal. You know, the end result is what the common goal here, and that's to become, again, a productive citizen of society and you know, stay out of the court systems in the bad ways, and stay out of, you know, police holdings and things like that, and get away from the treatment aspect once you're surpassed that, you know. And I think it's important for people to have that outlet, to be able to come to a coach and say, hey, you know, with no judgment, you know, you can trust each other, you know that you're there for one another, you know, and that coach is going to be there for you no matter what. And so to call them up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I'm really going through it right now. Do you have any suggestions for me that helped you? You know, and then to be able to relay that to someone and say, yeah, well, this is how I did it. Maybe it'll work for you. If not, there's a couple of other things. Do this, this, and this, and see if that works.
So you're always giving ultimate, like, more, you're always giving more choices. If they ask about what you did, you can tell them, and if that doesn't work for them, just keep giving them resources.
Absolutely. But there's no cookie cutter recovery. There's no
That's
one
right.
size fits all to this. So what works for me may not work for you.
That's right.
You know, and same goes for Katey.
Right.
Works for her may not work for me. So again, this is a journey, and so we need to, you know, cut the path, trailblaze basically, and try and figure out what's going to work for us. You know, I know people in recovery, long-term sustained recovery, that don't do meetings. That all they do is creative things, the poetry and things like that. You know, I know people who do nothing but meetings, and then I know people who, you know, go to other forms of meetings, because there's multiple facets to this.
That's
and
right.
so I think that it's important for people to understand that and to know that, not just society at large, but also the recoverees that you're working with. They need to understand that, like, you know, oh, well, 12 steps didn't work for me, so I'm not worth it. I'm just going to throw my hands up in despair and quit. No, there are other options for you.
And to that point, Katey, I'll go to you, but Chris, that brings me to a point. You just lit up something in my head. So when someone, recovery coaching, just going into the coaching, you talked about like the 12 steps. People have asked, is there a difference between sponsorship and coaching? Of course there is.
Absolutely.
Malden Overcoming Addiction feels very strongly that recovery coaching is the future for getting people on the road they need to be on, because as you both know, we're facing some pretty horrendous times out there.
Yes, we
The
are.
numbers are just staggering, going the wrong direction. And recovery coaching, I believe, is going to be the answer, strictly because, as you said, if you're in a program and you make a mistake, that can be devastating to you, where you might not want to come back. But a recovery coach, you could still be actively using, but having that friend, having that person to help and guide you along the way, that doesn't judge you, that doesn't tell you this is what you have to do. Just to sit there and be with you, whether it's to get a job or, I mean, if someone might be using 3 or 4 bags of heroin a day. As a recovery coach, I feel my job is how can I get you to use 2 bags?
Exactly. Harm reduction is a huge
Right.
piece of it.
That's correct.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
and that's the great thing about being a recovery coach. I don't preach any one way of recovery. I talk to the person and I figure out what's best for them. With them, they make the choices. I'm not telling them from a book, well, A, B, C. And like you said, if they are still actively using, well, how can we get you to somewhere that's not going to kill you? With the opioid crisis, that is the biggest fear. So if we can get them to a point that even that, you know, they look at multiple pathways, they look at a medicated assisted treatment, they find a way to reduce their use or use in safety.
So let me just interrupt you. I want you to give me a little more. So you mentioned multiple pathways. For the people that might not understand what that means, what is multiple pathways to recovery, Katey? What does that actually mean?
It means what works for you, and recovery is individual. It's for the person. It doesn't have any set rules. Like I said, there's hundreds of pathways that.
So someone could be using Suboxone. Someone could be on the Vivitrol shot. Someone might be on methadone. Whatever gets them to the point of not doing what they were doing to get them into recovery. There's just so many different ways to get here because there is a misconception out there that if you're on Suboxone or methadone through the eyes of society that like you're using, and that's
Well,
not the
there's a
case.
lot
Even
of
certain
stigma.
fellowships too.
Right.
Correct.
And the thing is for recovery coaching, that's where we tend to differ, is that we are going to meet you where you're at, and our ultimate goal is to get you down off of, you know, like you said, if you're doing 2-3 bags a day, let's get you down to 1. You know, if you're not doing heroin anymore and you're just smoking a joint, we're okay with that. Right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like this is better. You're not out there dying from smoking a joint. You know, now is that the route that we want everyone to take? Absolutely not. If you can, you know, abstinence is the goal here. We want people to stop.
But the goal is to get them there any way possible.
By any
Right, that's correct.
And
The thing
maybe
is, now they
abstinence
have-
isn't the goal either. Some
Right.
people, that may not be on their pathway. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
That's
And
true.
that's why I'm all for harm reduction and other things that have been coming into the media recently about
Yeah,
you
like
know,
safe
safe
injection
injection
sites.
sites and not using alone and teaching them how
I
to
love
use
it.
in
That's
safety.
correct. That's correct. See, this opens up a big box that we can try to educate people on because a lot of people have they just have misinformation. And these are the things we need to do to try to make our society and our city streets as safe as we possibly can. And that's why I believe recovery coaching is the way of the future because it's about harm reduction.
Right. Well, it's important
You know?
to remember that this is not a moral disorder. This is a disease of the brain. You know, so you know, just because I have great values and great morals doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to stop using. You know, I'm going to need those multiple pathways. If I need to use them, they need to be at my disposal. You know, as far as coming off the streets and becoming a recovering addict. You know, and that's just, you know, for me, that's important. You know, and I think it's stigmatized because people look at it and say, well, that person's still, they're just substituting. It's just a crutch. In reality, would you rather have someone going to the clinic every morning and living, again, that productive society, that productive citizen, becoming that person, or would you rather have them on the street corner, hunched over, looking like a folding chair, you know, which is very sad, and we see it daily. You know, it's a shame. You know, you walk down Mass Ave, and it's all about, you know, so it's just it's important.
It's a tough time
It
that
is
we're in.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's a very, very
You know,
tough
people
time.
call it an epidemic. I'd go so far as to call it a pandemic.
It's all of them.
No, it is a
nationwide,
pandemic.
you
An
know, it's
epidemic.
worldwide, like-
An epidemic is something that is down to a specific area.
Right.
And this is
And
not
this is
that.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And what's great too is the MOA is in the Malden Drug Court as well because a lot of addiction breeds petty crime. It breeds thefts and larcenies and things like that. So people get themselves caught up in the legal system, and then it's a revolving door.
Right.
But now the push is for, you know, to
Treatment.
divert from incarceration to treatment. And I think the drug courts, especially Malden Drug Court, is very progressive, and they're on the front lines doing that work every day.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Thank you for mentioning that, Katey. So Malden Overcoming Addiction has a very close relationship with Judge Barnes in the Malden Drug Court, and we met with him maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago, on this specific topic, and you guys are in there. And we have a coordinator called Donna Aiello. She's amazing.
Wonderful lady.
Wonderful.
Now, here's a woman that is just driven. Like, without her, this doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah,
you know, let's just get that out there.
She said to me today, she goes, "I'm not Superwoman." I said, "But you really are."
But again, with Donna's determination and her passion for this, overseeing this project and giving her time, you guys are in there. So tell me, for folks that don't understand drug court, what is it? It's people that are in trouble that go in and see a judge, and they have to do certain things. Their urine gets called, and they're trying to keep them out of jail. It's almost like that one last chance. If you do this, you won't go here. If you don't do this, you're going to jail. So now we've got in with them to try to get these individuals some help, a recovery coach. And Malden Overcoming Addiction recovery coaches are all volunteer.
Right.
It's absolutely amazing the work that you guys are doing, that we all do in the community. So tell me, just give me a couple of minutes briefly on drug court. What does it look like in there?
Well, drug court, what it is that there's different levels of drug court. And the first level usually is when people accept drug court as their probation or their option. They go to a residential facility. That's the first part of it. And then they move up through stages as they, you know, continue to do the right thing and follow the rules. Typically, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesdays.
That's
for
correct.
Malden?
Yes. Yep.
Malden,
Yep.
Right. And so the judge is there, the court clinician is there, the probation officers. It's all the pieces of the puzzle together with the person that's on probation. And so they talk about where they're at, how they're doing in their program. Are they attending their meetings? Are they meeting with their recovery coach?
So these people have got assigned in Malden Overcoming Addiction recovery coach that they're meeting with, and they're
Right.
in Malden Drug Court, and they're getting coached through Malden Overcoming Addiction. It's amazing.
Right.
And Chris, you're in there.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's it look like for you?
Well, it's kind of ironic because Judge Barnes was my judge when I was on Chelsea District Court.
So you went through drug court.
So I went through drug court.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
So that explains your passion for doing what you do.
absolutely. I mean, again, I just wanted to give back. You know, something that I took so much out of. You know, why not give back to it? You know, and I have the insight as well because I've been through it. You know, and when people hear that, wow, he actually went through it. You know, they're like, wow, okay, and they're a little more open to talking and discussing what's going on in their lives. You know, but as far as drug court, I mean, you know, you don't necessarily. Sometimes you don't go into an inpatient. You start out at phase 1, it goes through phase 4, 18 months, 4 months on each phase. You go, basically, like as Katey said, you know, you have the court clinicians, you have the lawyers, you have the judge, you have the probation officers, you have the Malden Overcoming Addiction recovery coaches, and we are all a team. That is a
So
drug
you're
court
in the
team.
actual court.
We are in the actual
You're
court.
watching this
We
happen.
are watching what is going on. We are giving our feedback, our input.
So
all
you're
of the
talking.
above.
You're talking to the judge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And,
Amazing.
And it's a gratifying experience, especially to see, you know, being on one side of the fence and then moving to the other side.
So
of
you're
the fence.
standing
It's
up
like-
for these. What these people are doing, working with you. You're you know, essentially standing up for them, reporting to the judge that they're reporting to you, doing what they're supposed to be doing, or not.
Right.
Or not,
Yeah,
because let's
yeah.
face it, there is the or not part of it.
Right.
But basically, you guys are in there, like, doing it. Front lines, right there. You're there to help these people further their journey.
Absolutely, yeah. In there like swimwear, right?
That's amazing, Chris. That's amazing, Katey. Both of you. That's just good for you and good for Malden Overcoming Addiction. And I have a couple of minutes left, 2 minutes, and I want to talk real quick, maybe a minute each or whatever you can. Tell me where you see this going. Where do you hope and where do you see this going for you personally? Do you plan on staying, doing this with Malden Overcoming Addiction? What are your hopes and goals?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully, eventually it would be nice to be able to feed my family doing this.
Correct. Get some funding.
Right,
And
getting
we're
some
working on
funding.
it.
That's an
correct.
essential part to this, And again, I mean, I would do this. I do this for free, and I would do this for free for the rest of my life. Is that feasible? Probably not.
No, it's not.
But I definitely would, And the thing is, I hope to see this go a lot further. I hope to see more recovery coaches come on and play a role in this because, honest to God, this is the front lines. Like, we are here and we can meet people where they're at, and we don't have that, I guess, the lock on us that we can't be as open with people as, obviously there's ethics and boundaries, but there's also, the link that we're not clinical. We can actually come at people and be equals to them, because essentially that's what we are. We may have a little bit of a power, but it's not, we don't portray that to recoveries. You guys are on our level. You guys are the same as us. We're just trying to help you out here. And I want to see this go much further. I would love to see
Chris,
MOA eventually get, some type of recovery center in Malden.
We're working on
That
that as
would
well.
be- that would be
That's something
wonderful,
else we're working on. And Katey, just in a few seconds, you got about 20 seconds. Where do you see this going?
Well, the thing about addiction is it isolates people, and the way to combat that is with community, and that's why we need more resources in Malden. We need a place that people can go and all be together and share that experience, strength, and hope with each other, and be in a place that has, groups of people and support systems that people can just go there and they can find whatever it is that they're looking for in their recovery, so that they're not alone. We're
Right.
not alone anymore.
Wonderful.
All right, so we want to, at this point, just thank everybody for tuning in, but we want you all to know that there's going to be another Recovery Coach Academy. Malden Overcoming Addiction will be having another one in January. We want you to keep your eye on our Facebook page. We'll be posting about that and how to get a hold of us through the Facebook page coming up in the next couple weeks. We thank you for tuning in, and until next month, take care.